Good morning, everybody. I'm Perry Leo, and I'm chairing this special meeting of the University Senate. I'll start in 1 minute just to give everybody time to log in and to uh, hopefully do what Amber asked for in the chat.
I joined too late to see what's in the chat. Could that be reposted, please?
It's I think just to put your first and last name in the chat. All right, I'm going to start now. Good morning, everybody. I now call the special meeting of the University Senate to order. Before we begin, I will note that the Senate office staff are monitoring quorum and will be marking people present in real time. If you need to leave before the vote takes place, please send a chat to Lori Cooper Stoll so that we can maintain an accurate count. We have an hour for this meeting, so hopefully there will be plenty of time for discussion and we can get to the vote by the end of the hour. All right, so that's item one. Item two is discussion and action on a proposed resolution to request to retract the UMN Board of Regents resolution related to response to President's Task Force on Institutional Speech report. That's quite the title. I will first call on Professors Terry Carraway and Eric Van Wyk to introduce the resolution. Professor Carraway, I believe you're first.
Yes, thanks, Professor Leo. So Eric Van Wyk, the chair of the Academic Freedom and Tenure Committee, the AF&T, and I are sharing responsibility for presenting the resolution in today's special session. My comments will focus on how the AF&T resolution made its way to this special session, while Eric will present the resolution. I should note that in addition to serving as a faculty senator, I am also a member of the AF&T, so I was involved in both the committee's deliberations and in organizing today's special session. So how did we get here? So it all began on February 7th, when SCC Chair Jennifer Goodnow informed the University Senate that the Board of Regents had placed a resolution on the February 14th docket that pertained to the draft administrative policy that this body approved in December by a vote of 122 to 8. After receiving the board's resolution, the AF&T chair immediately shared the board's resolution with the committee. Many members were alarmed because the principles articulated in the resolution differed substantially from the draft administrative policy and did so in ways that undermined academic freedom and shared governance. Because of this, the consensus on the committee was that it was incumbent on us to take action. A subset of committee members drafted a resolution, which the rest of the committee reviewed and commented on before it was finalized for a vote. And on February 12th, the committee voted 12 to 2 in support of the resolution. Given the urgency of the matter, a special session needed to be convened so that senators would have the opportunity to discuss and vote on the AF&T resolution. After the committee approved the resolution, 2 members of the committee who are also senators, Chase Krug and I, began to recruit the requisite number of senators needed to call for a special session. With the help of other senators, we quickly met the requirement. We filed our request on Thursday, February 13th. Since then, we have continued to sign on sponsors, and as of today, 63 senators from across the university have agreed to co-sponsor the resolution before you today. So with that, I'll turn things over to Eric Van Wyk.
Thanks, Terry. Excuse me. Yeah, so I have a little bit of a history here as well, just so we sort of know the context of what is sort of going on. So this began in February of 2024, right? So at the direction of the Faculty Senate, AF&T began studying and understanding this issue relevant to departments or other academic units making statements on matters of public interest. At that time, there was no academic policy on how units were supposed to do this, and the committee dived in and devoted all of its time that spring semester to this task. So the report, sorry, the result was a report with recommendations for an administrative policy. That report recognized the importance of statements to departments, centers, institutes, and other units, especially when that statement is based on or informed by that unit's scholarship. So the recommendations suggested a framework in which statements could be made. Right, some of the main points here would be, how we provided guidelines for navigating the potential conflict between the views of the unit and the dissenting views of members of that unit. And then also discussion of requiring disclaimers so that this perspective of the unit is not taken mistakenly to be the perspective or the view of the entire institution. Right, so the Faculty Senate voted on this in May, I guess, 60 to 16 to endorse that report and its recommendations. Right, that report then went to the President's Task Force on Institutional Speech. And that task force was charged with actually writing the policy itself. Right, so there's a lot of consultation then between the task force and different elements of shared governance. Right, so the chair, Phil Buhlman, visited AF&T a couple times, was at SCAFA and the Senate. Right, so the result then was a policy that AF&T endorsed, and then it came to this Senate on December 5 and was endorsed by a pretty astounding vote of 122 to 8. Right? At a recent Senate meeting, this process was hailed as sort of a triumph of shared governance, that there was genuine happiness that this worked out quite well. Right? I remember having a little skepticism about how this would all play out. And at the end, I felt really good, right? That a lot of people came together, tried to understand the complexities and the nuances of a difficult topic, resolve them, and a policy was created that had a tremendous amount of support. So many of us were then naturally shocked and confused to see the board's resolution. Right, this appeared just a week before the board's meeting in which it was discussed. So that resolution, right, I'll say a few words about the content of that. That resolution essentially directs the president to create a new policy that goes in a quite different direction. Right, so what happened then, right, is AF&T met, as Terry explained, and wrote the resolution that is in front of you now. So that's in the docket. You might pull that up. I'm going to talk about a few different clauses in it, but I don't think slides are necessary, and I don't want to read them to you verbatim. So Amber, perhaps if you could drop the link to the resolution in the chat, that'd be great. But otherwise, it's in the docket, and you should be able to find it. Right, so the resolution that sits before you has several of these whereas clauses, right? And they sort of break down into there's three concerns here, I think, that we should talk about. Right, the first one is this issue of process, right? So the fourth and the sixth whereas clauses get into this, right? They indicate that the board resolution, undermines this year-long collaborative effort by faculty to find a solution to a difficult problem. All these elements of shared governance, the Senate's, the committees, the administration's task force came together, right? And so it's not this loss of time that matters, though that's frustrating. More importantly, it's this shared understanding that came out of all that effort, all those meetings, all those discussions, all that consultation. Right, it's that shared understanding of this complex issue that is really being discarded here by the board's resolution. Right, it significantly diminishes the value of the role of shared governance at this university. Right, so the board certainly has power to direct the president to rewrite the policy. That doesn't, however, make it the right thing to do. The second concern is one about the content of the resolution, what it's asking the president to do. Right, so the fifth clause in the fifth whereas clause in the resolution before you quotes the task force policy to explain that the mission and the disciplinary scope of some units will intersect with matters of public concern, and those units should not be hampered from bringing their scholarship to bear on these complex and vexing problems. The board's mission statement, which was quite an influential document in AF&T's work, right? It directs us to work to benefit, quote, students, scholars, and communities across the state, the nation, and the world, end quote. In describing the research and public service aspects of the mission, it discusses bringing knowledge from the university, not keeping it bound up in the university, right? Bringing it to society, saying, quote, by applying scholarly expertise to community problems, end quote. And making this knowledge, again, quote, accessible to the citizens of the state, the nation, and the world. So that phrase shows up a couple times, this whole point of bringing information out to the world. So this is certainly true for some departments, some more than others, but it's the absolute lifeblood of centers and institutes at the university, right? So the board's resolution seems to forget its own mission statement a little bit here in what it's imploring us and what that mission statement implores us to do. Right, so the plain and simple reading of the board's resolution would prohibit these kinds of statements. The third main concern is one about First Amendment, right? So many of our colleagues have raised concerns about First Amendment, about the board's resolution. This is with regard to sort of overly broad restrictions on speech. We have some genuine experts on this topic in the Senate, so I'll probably leave the discussion of some of those concerns to them. Finally, there are the resolved clauses in the resolution. Essentially, the resolution asks the Senate, does it state as its view that this resolution from the board should be retracted, right, for the reasons described above in the whereas clauses. That's the short and sweet of it. With that, that's the end of my presentation. I'm happy to take any questions senators may have on any of this. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Professor Van Wyk. Before opening the discussion, I'm going to call on SCC Chair Jen Goodenow to update the group on things that have happened since this meeting was called. Professor Goodenow.
Yeah, thank you, Perry. And thank you to the Senate's office for getting this special meeting scheduled, perhaps a task that rivals the labors of Hercules. I wanted to call attention to a few of the other related pieces of information in the docket, and as Perry said, I do have an update. On Monday, February 10th, I called a special meeting of the SCC-FCC, and those minutes are provided for you in the docket. At that meeting, we considered this AF&T resolution, which was a draft at the time, and opted not to endorse it. We also voted not to call a special meeting. Instead, we voted to collaboratively, as a committee, draft a letter from the FCC and SCC to be sent to the Board of Regents leadership. That letter was previously shared with you and is included in the docket as well. That letter and many of the other letters were noted by several regents at their February 14th meeting. I'd encourage you to watch that section of the meeting if you haven't already. The link is included in the docket. The new information that I have to share as a result of that letter, Perry and I, as SCC-FCC leadership, and Phil Bowman, who is the chair of the task force, and Mark B., who was a task force member, and both Phil and Mark are emeriti SCC-FCC chairs, we were all invited to a meeting with the Board of Regent leadership earlier this week. We had an opportunity to explain the concerns raised in our letter, as well as the ones we saw in the letters shared with us. And we were able to offer suggestions of ways to move forward together, especially as the president might fulfill their ask to implement the guiding principles. In my opinion, this was a consultative meeting in that they listened, they sought to understand, they asked us questions, and I felt our voice was heard. Now, I certainly don't know what the board may do as a result of that meeting, because as we all know, consultation isn't the same as agreeing to do what we want, but the letter and subsequent meeting to me felt like shared governance. Thank you, Perry.
Thank you, Professor Goodenow. We will now proceed to discussion. Because our bylaws require pro-con debate, when you raise your hand, please also send a chat to Amber Bathke indicating whether you are in favor of the resolution or against it. Also, in accordance with our bylaws, we will prioritize speakers who have not yet spoken, including yielding time. I will defer to Amber to call on people in the appropriate order. When you are called on, please introduce yourself and indicate which unit you represent. Please also note that non-members may speak only if yielded time by a senator. As a reminder, part of the role of the chair is to manage the discussion In order to allow more individuals to speak, I may choose not to invite a response from the presenters after every comment or question. The floor is now open for discussion. Amber, if you would please call on people.
First up, we have Shuji.
Hi, Sugi Ganeshanathan, faculty senator from CLA. I'd like to yield time to Carrie Walling.
Do I have to agree? Fine. Carrie.
Thank you for this opportunity to speak in favor of this faculty Senate resolution. So I'm Carrie Walling. I'm director of the Human Rights Program in the Institute for Global Studies. The Board of Regents' proposed resolution would be devastating for us. The Human Rights Program has a three-part mission: advance human rights scholarship, train future human rights professionals, engage the most serious human rights issues through projects and programming. The resolution proposed by the Regents would restrict the ability of my program and its staff to fulfill this mission. First, all human rights issues are issues of public interest and public concern. Second, most of the work we produce could be considered institutional statements according to the resolution language. For 24 years, the Human Rights Program has engaged in activity that could be prohibited. Our mission drives us to interpret and respond to contemporary human rights challenges. I offer examples of activity under threat. Our faculty researchers promote understanding of and protection of human rights. Our grantees are required to disseminate findings to non-specialist public audiences, community members, and policy practitioners. A current project aims to reduce the number of parents incarcerated in Minnesota. Our proposals and the materials we produce to disseminate them critique existing policy as inconsistent with human rights standards, and we offer alternatives. Our public commentary at events, policy reports, responses to media inquiries, and even our biweekly newsletter, which offers human rights analysis
30
on
seconds remaining.
current crises, would violate the proposed policy. We produce statements on Human Rights Weekly. Individual academic freedom protections do not sufficiently protect the collective nature of program and center work. Please protect the Human Rights Program and our non-tenured staff and other centers and institutes by passing this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you. Amber, would you call on the next person, please?
Yes, next up is Jessica Lopez Lyman.
Hi, everyone. Apologies, I cannot turn my video on at this time. I am against the Board of Regents resolution because as an ethnic studies scholar in Chicano Latino studies specifically, our disciplines, particularly those that are connected with ridges, were founded out of protest. We're founded out of being in direct relationship with the community. And so part of our scholarship, part of our responsibility, part of the mission of our department and many other ethnic studies departments on campus require that we offer timely statements on issues that are pertinent within our community. So for example, since I've been at the U, we've issued statements discussing immigration on the border when children were separated from their families. We've issued statements against the murder of George Floyd. We've issued statements for ethnic studies, which was instrumental in getting the ethnic studies K-12 bill passed in 2023. If the Board of Regents resolution goes through, it will prohibit us from doing what we are, I would say, foundationally meant to do in our discipline, which is to research and to be a voice with our community partners. And so I strongly urge people to support the Faculty Senate resolution and not the Board of Regents. Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to make it clear that when you say pro or con, it's for the resolution that's on the table, which is to ask the board to retract their resolution. It's not pro or con for the board's resolution. Okay, so pro means that you want the resolution asking the board to retract their resolution. Con means you don't want that. Amber, would you please call on the next person?
Yes, I'm going to go next with Sharon Jansa, who has a question.
Thank you. Unfortunately, I also can't turn my camera on today, but I have a question for the SCC chair, Jen. This resolution requests that the resolution, if passed, gets sent to the Board of Regents. but our governing documents say that a resolution shall be forwarded to the office of the president, presumably by the SCC chair. So my question for you is, what are you going to do if this resolution passes? And what would be the implications if you have to send it to the president?
Jen, if you would like to respond?
Yeah, thank you. It's a good question because this is not at all our typical process. Our typical process would be that a resolution goes to the office of the president. However, one of my duties listed in our Constitution as chair of SCC is to be the official spokesperson for the University Senate, and I would certainly honor the will of the body to comply with the, if it's passed, the request is that I would send it to the regents within 2 days, and I would certainly do that. But you know, I think also maybe embedded in the question is, would it also go to the office of the president? And my guess would be no, although now we're into Senate office guidance on past practice. But again, there's a little bit of unusualness there. So if I didn't clarify the question enough, Perry, I can say more.
I think that's good. Sharon, are you okay with
Okay.
that answer?
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Jen. Appreciate it.
Okay. Amber, if you could call the next person, please.
Yes, next let's see, is Tim Johnson, who's con.
Tim, you're on mute.
I was hitting my button. I didn't realize it wasn't working. I represent the FCC, or I'm on the FCC and the FCC. I have 3 points that I want to make, and I'll try to make them quickly. The first is, Eric, you talked quite a bit about process in terms of the Board of Regents, and I would really like some more clarification and explanation on AF&T following process itself, calling an emergency meeting on a Sunday morning, February 9th, going into executive session, and ostensibly, at least initially, not having minutes taken of that meeting, and then not actually even having a quorum when a decision was made to craft this resolution, which I don't think, given parliamentary procedure, you actually could have done. The second point, I will very quickly just hammer home the point that Jen made, and that is that the way shared governance works is that we live, even at this university, in a representative democracy, and the representatives of the Senate, in this case for shared governance, are the SCC and the FCC, and they met with the Board of Regents and had a very productive conversation. That, for me, is the way that shared governance should work, not this process of being this upset and pointing fingers at the board. We should be talking with them because we're all in this together. And my last point would be that despite the fact that I actually agree with the arguments being made in favor of this resolution,
30 seconds.
My issue is all about process. And my last process point is, why did AF&T not wait for the process to play out and wait for full debate of the Senate at its in-person March 6th meeting and call this an emergency session? I actually ended up having to cancel class to make sure that I was here in the middle of a Thursday morning when we all could have talked about this in person on the 6th, because we know that the board was not going to take action. It was just a resolution at its February meeting, and wouldn't take action until at least its March meeting and maybe beyond that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Eric, would you like to respond?
Yeah, certainly. So, yeah, so first, I guess I should explain what happened, but also correct a few things there. So we did call a impromptu emergency meeting, if you will. So I sent out a time poll to members of the committee saying, when can we meet? Of course, meeting is very difficult. So I picked the time that was optimal, the most members could attend. So that was the reason for picking the time on Sunday. It was actually Sunday afternoon, not Sunday morning. We had 7 members present, right? So we didn't have quorum. So we bumbled a few procedural things, but not in a substantial or meaningful way. So committee members said, oh, they wanted to go into executive session, thinking that this was, there were people wanted to air their feelings in an open and honest way, and were not excited about minutes being taken for that. So we had our discussion, but no decisions were actually made at the meeting, right? So we talked, people thought something should happen, right? But no formal action was taken, right? No vote was taken saying that we should write a statement, right? What happened is that people decided, some members felt like, well, if a few members went off and wrote a resolution and drafted a resolution, they could share that with the committee, right? So this is not an uncommon thing to happen. I've drafted resolutions before and brought them to the committee for them to comment, review, and decide what to do. And the committee then as a whole makes that decision if they want to move forward with that results that or not. So that's what happened here, right? Then that resolution draft was shared with the committee. There was discussion. The vote happened on the 11th, I think. There was a 12-2 vote in favor of that. And so we proceeded, right? So that's what happened there. We didn't initially have minutes, partly because we were moving fast, trying to react to a difficult situation. I wish we had more time to move a little more slowly. If we wanted more time, I guess I would, talk to the board about not dropping this thing 7 days before their meeting and putting people in a difficult position of having to move. So, we did create the minutes. They're up there now. People want to read them. They're welcome to do so. But I don't see that there's any issues in how the resolution came to be and how the committee voted to support it. I agree. We should talk to the board. The bottom line is that after years of consultation, right, I reached out to the board last April, right? I sent the board an email and saying, hey, we're diving into this. You probably have perspectives that we would love to hear. We were trying to gather as much information as we could, and we were politely told, no, carry on with what you're doing, right? So I don't think this is an issue of us not trying to talk to the board. That's maybe it goes the other direction.
Thank you. Amber, I think we're on the pro side now.
So next up, we have Eric Schwartz.
Let me say at the outset that I support the resolution primarily because the region's resolution and the provision on units was just so outrageous. And there has been some engagement with the regions, but I'm not sure I've gotten a real indication of that they're moving very quickly. So, I support the resolution. I also understand Jennifer's point about engagement. So if it's appropriate, I want to offer a friendly amendment to the resolution. And I've given it to Amber. I don't know if she's able to distribute it. But the resolution would be a new second resolve clause, not replacing any of the clauses in the resolution. And it simply says, resolve that the Faculty Senate welcomes the Board of Regents' recent willingness to engage with the Presidential Task Force Chair and its members to better appreciate the logic of the task force analysis and recommendations, and urges continued discussions to ensure that any board action is more consistent with the principles of shared governance, academic freedom, and the mission of the university. My goal there is it responds to the point that Jennifer makes, but I don't think it pulls back the resolution because I think a strong statement from
30 seconds.
The faculty is Senate is necessary, but I'm wondering whether the drafters would accept that as a friendly amendment.
All right, so the rules are that Professor Caraway gets to accept this as a friendly amendment or not. If not, we will have 5 minutes to debate on whether to consider the amendment, followed by 5 minutes more debate about the proposed amendment. So I'll start with Professor Caraway. Do you accept this as a friendly amendment?
I do.
Okay. That means I have to skip to the section that says yes. Senate staff, please update the document to reflect this amendment. And then Amber has it written, so hopefully that's okay. Amber, are you good?
Yep, I am going to do that just shortly. Should I call on the next person while I'm doing that?
Please, that would be great.
All right, next up we have Stacy Maher, who has a neutral comment.
Thanks, Amber, and thanks, Professor Leo.
My name is Stacy Maher. I'm an administrative director in CFANS. I'm a Civil Service University Senate member. I am a member of SCC and the chair of the Civil Service Consultative Committee. My position today is neutral, and I'm requesting my Senate peers, both staff and faculty, to abstain from a vote today. As staff at the university, the matters of tenure protection and academic freedom do not extend to me. As a senator, my eyebrows raise when spicy issues are rushed through formal processes, much like this issue has been rushed before this body today. I am very pleased to learn that the board responded to SCC's letter in a consultative dialogue. Today, I implore my colleagues to abstain, remain neutral, and send a message to the approximate 10% of our Senate peers that this is a faculty Senate matter, and it's not in the best interest of the shared university body. So please give the regents a bit more time. I believe we had a pro member today also refer to this as faculty Senate, and it is not. It is the University Senate. So thank you for your time, and I implore you to remain neutral today.
Thank you.
Okay.
Jen, can you say maybe a word about why this is to the University Senate and not to the Faculty Senate?
That was the request that was made by Professor Caraway, and the group gathered to meet the criteria for that. I think Stacy's right that it's unusual, and actually, as she's calling out, that the friendly amendment does say Faculty Senate. And so maybe someone, I guess I technically could, would maybe make a friendly amendment to the friendly to make that University Senate in the amendment there, and you can check and see if that's correct or not. But again, not following the usual process from a committee through a consultative committee to a meeting means that things do appear a little bit wonky. And so that the request was for a University Senate meeting, and that request was honored.
Can I?
Professor Caraway, would you like to respond?
Yeah, and I think I'm fine with, as long as Professor Schwartz is also fine with changing it from Faculty Senate to University Senate. Let me just say that the reason that we brought it to the University Senate is because the University Senate is the body that voted on the draft administrative policy. So we thought this would be the appropriate venue to bring this resolution.
Okay, thank you. Amber, if you would call on the next person, please.
All right. Let's see. We just had a pro. I'm going to call on Emily Snellrud, who's con.
Sorry. Can you hear me? Hi, I'm Emily Snellrud. I'm a faculty senator in CBS, and I apologize for the background noise as I am sitting in the airport. So I am con with respect to this particular resolution, and the meat of what I was going to say has actually kind of already been said by Tim. I want to echo Tim's concern about process, given the added details after his comment. I just want to say I'm wondering about the range of consultation that went into drafting and revising the resolution, given the timeline. This all feels kind of rushed. I wonder why it wasn't on the docket for next week, so we'd have more time to discuss. I agree with many of the aspects of the concerns that go into the resolution, but it does feel rushed. Second, I also feel like we're generally at a time as higher education people that we should really be working together with each other to kind of advance things. And so I really appreciate the summary that Jen gave about process of iterative and collaborative discussion with the regents. I feel like that is more of the approach that we should be taking to shared governance right now, given that we're kind of under these external government threats to higher education. And so this process does not seem to go along with that sort of iterative collaborative process, given this recent information. So that's what I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Amber.
All right, next, Mark B with a question.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me okay? Mark B. I'm an alternate for Mike Wilson as a CBS senator. I'm also the current past chair of the FCC-SEC. I was a member of the task force that wrote the proposed administrative policy that was approved by AF&T and the University Senate. And I have a question, just I guess for Eric or Carrie or Terry rather, sorry, either one. Can you articulate how you view the current sort of proposed administrative policy as allowing sort of departmental statements, center statements, institute statements, and so forth, because I think the task force would say that the policy that was adopted and endorsed by AF&T, endorsed by AF&T and the University Senate does not allow sort of departmental statements in the sense that we traditionally think about those, right? And so I'm just wondering if Eric could elaborate on his understanding of that and how that may dovetail with what the board has provided in terms of guidelines. Thank you.
Thank you. Eric, would you like to respond?
Yeah, I think that the recommendations from AF&T and the task force draft policy are very much in alignment, right? Because they allow groups of faculty to come together in a department or other groups of other members of that department or unit, right? And issue statements that appear on that department's website that carry the imprintur of that unit, right? So they are official statements. The draft policy says that people come together to write official statements. So that's an official statement. That's how I understand that. That's how I see it. So.
Follow up?
Go ahead,
Sure.
Mark.
I would clarify, I think, what the policy actually says. It's that group of constituents, whether it's faculty or faculty and staff or faculty, staff, students, whoever that unit decides is the constituents that can issue statements, do so as that group, not as the department, not as the center, not as an institute. And so that's maybe a fine detail of policy, but I think it's one that often gets glossed over. I think many people have not perhaps fully understood what the endorsed proposed policy actually allows and doesn't allow. It would not
30
allow
seconds.
A statement saying the Department of X makes this statement on this issue, right? That the policy would not allow that AF&T endorsed and that the University Senate endorsed. And I just want people to sort of understand that's, when we say that the departments and centers can make statements, we should be careful about what the policy actually says.
Can I respond real quick?
Very briefly, Eric. I want other people to have a chance, and we're at 10:38 now, so.
No, certainly. I guess, the real thing I would love to hear from the board is the answer to the question that's in the FCC letter, right? If their proposed changes would, throw out the draft policy or not. I certainly read it as it would. And so, we may, quibble about some of these details, but fundamentally, the issue is that the board is moving to throw out the draft policy. It's not an issue of what exactly the draft policy says, right? AF&T endorsed it. We think it's good. Is it everything we would have written? No, but the whole point was that everybody came together on this. All of these people, and the board is saying, thank you, no thank you. That's the fundamental issue.
All right, so Amber, I have no idea where we are in the pro-con loop, so hopefully you do.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with Kathy Quick next, who has another question, and then we'll get back to pros and cons.
Thank you. I'm Kathy Quick. I'm a faculty senator from the Humphrey School of Public Affairs. And relative to what it is that Eric just said, that is my primary question. I don't actually understand what the Board of Regents is trying to do, what the deficiency is in the policy that we passed already by 100 and whatever it was, 122 to 8 or something like that. I don't actually have a good handle on what the objection is to that policy. And so in this consultative process, it would be extremely important, I think, to get to the bottom of that. And I'm partly asking whether anybody has some understanding of that right now that they could share. I would also say that I do not agree that this is simply a matter for faculty. The University of Minnesota itself, its centers, the university's whole mission is a matter of public interest and public concern. And so I think this is, deeply relevant to staff, students, faculty. The one thing that the Board of Regents did clearly underline at their discussion of this a couple of weeks ago was that they absolutely are standing by academic freedom. And this is another matter that actually does strongly impact staff who are part of centers and staff in general. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll try to briefly answer the question the best I can, and Jen, if I get it wrong, please help. The Board of Regents resolution is not a policy. It's a set of guiding principles that ask the president that the president is supposed to use to develop a policy from, with the knowledge of everything else that's gone on. So there is no policy from the Board of Regents. So that's my best answer. Jen, if you have anything to add, please do so.
No, I think the question is a very good one, because it isn't, the guiding principles do not explicitly throw out the proposed administrative policy approved by the Senate. That was an explicit question in our letter. In our meeting earlier this week, I would say the board did a lot more listening as we advocated for clarity on that, but did not speak to that, because they're also only, 3 members of the board. They can't act. So I guess I would say I don't see it explicitly throwing out the administrative policy. It certainly would be within the realm of possibilities that the president, in implementing the guiding principles, which is what she's asked to do in the current version of the resolution, could in fact apply those guiding principles to the existing proposed policy. But again, I am absolutely not any sort of like Board of Regents whisperer in all of this. And again, I met with 3 of them. There's 12 of them. One can't know. There was a diversity of opinions from the board at the meeting. And again, encouragement to watch that if you haven't.
Could I answer the question that was asked?
What question, Eric?
From the senator. I missed her name.
I was asking for
briefly.
some understanding. This is Kathy Quick. I was asking, I think Jennifer just answered my question. Thank you.
All right, thanks.
All right, Amber, next person, please.
Next up is Cal Mergendahl, who's been waiting very patiently.
Thank you, Cal Mergendahl, I'm president of the Council of Graduate Students, but I'm here today as the alternate/proxy for the student senator Chase Krug. I would like to start by personally highlighting my own experience in working with the Board of Regents as a former student representative to the board, more recently as a member of the Regent Candidate Advisory Council. And personally, with that experience in mind, I think it is absolutely critical that the Senate pass this resolution and that the board withdraw its proposal or bring it into line with the recommendations made by this body and others. The board's job is to provide top-level oversight and guidance to the university. It's not really a body that's designed to freehand academic policy like this. I have a lot of, I've worked with the board. I have a lot of respect for the unique expertise that each member of the board brings to the horseshoe with them, and for their willingness to acknowledge the fact that they don't know everything. But I think a proposal like this really needs to factor in input from the stakeholders who live and breathe these issues every single day, and for the board's proposed policy to really fundamentally diverge from the recommendations that were made does, in my opinion, disregard shared governance. And I think to kick the matter over to the president after her own task force has already put in a lot of legwork on this almost comes across as a little bit insulting to me, frankly. And if this process, this resolution right now that we're debating feels rushed, it's because the board itself has rushed it. They want to vote on this by mid-March. The possibility of a special session even before mid-March was floated by multiple regents earlier in the month. So I think the speed here was not, that was forced. That was not something that was chosen by the people who are bringing this resolution forward. I think this is a lightning rod right now because of the tensions that are ongoing in higher ed that were, mentioned previously. And I think right now that, the current moment really demands that university leadership, including and especially the board, should be standing by students, faculty, and staff whenever possible. And I think that means supporting the suggestions made by the Senate and the President's task force and not trying to overrule them. The board is here to serve us, not the other way around. And for those reasons, I'd ask the board to withdraw its proposal in its current form, and I support this Senate motion doing the same.
Thank you. Amber, next person, please.
Next person is Nathaniel Mills, who is pro.
Yeah, thank you. I am in favor of this resolution. I think there's been a lot of discussion around process and the timing that's been involved in bringing it forward. I would just point out a few things. The board policy on academic freedom that we currently have does not limit academic freedom to only faculty members. It is something that is a right of all employees at the university who are engaged in the production dissemination of knowledge. And so I agree with the former speaker who kind of insisted that, yes, this is in fact relevant to staff, as well as faculty. And hence, this is why we're taking it up in the University Senate. In terms of the timing being rushed, as Eric has said, the Board of Regents has been invited to consult on this policy over the last several years, or at least over the past year. They declined to do so, and they dropped the resolution on February 7th with little heads up or little warning. That's not working together with the shared governance system. That's the board trying to override the shared governance system. And that's the reason why this meeting is rushed. This meeting may have been rushed, but if you look at the number of people in attendance, I think it's quite clear that that has not been an issue in terms of people coming, because this is actually a very important issue that we need to discuss, regardless of the timing behind it. So I think, this comes down to concerns about process aside. This comes down to, do you think that the Board of Regents should be setting policy for the university in ways that follow the recommendations of the shared governance system, or in ways that
30
disregard them?
seconds.
And if you think that they should be following the recommendations of the shared governance system, you should vote in favor of this resolution.
Thank you. So all the people remaining are pros. It is 10:47. I would like to have this last no longer than an hour. I have a hard stop at 11, so I'll if people want to call the vote at some point, please do so. Otherwise, Amber, please call the next person.
Okay, I will go to Scott Creer, who has a question.
Hi, thank you. I had a point of information, I guess, to ask the question about, can someone specifically articulate exactly how the Board of Regents guidelines are contrary to what was passed by the body and endorsed as a proposed guidance for the administration to make a policy? I'd like to hear from the authors of that original piece, either Jennifer or Mark. I think Mark was one of the original authors of that.
All right, Mark, are you still here? Yep. Would you like to respond?
I am still here. I will say, you can see and hear me. I will say that I think opinions vary about what the difference between the guardrails the board has provided in its initial draft resolution are relative to what the task force proposed as its advised policy. My personal read, and that's all I can share with you, is my personal read, is that it really boils down to whether or not statements on positions of on matters of public interest can be posted on university websites. That's my impression, is that is the kind of one of the main issues the board is concerned about. I think they've heard from a lot of stakeholders besides us about these statements, and that appears to be, in my read of the resolution itself and in the conversations I've had, one of the main sort of differences, that the administrative policy would allow groups of individuals, not departments, not centers, not institutes, but groups of individuals within those units to follow up the policy that they've adopted, to issue a statement that could be posted on the university website. I think that issue of statements being made on our behalf of units and posted on websites is the key thing for a key thing for the board. I will also add that on the task force itself, the issue of posting on websites is something that we wrestled with quite extensively. And we came down where the proposed policy sits. And so I'll leave it there. If you have follow-up questions, I'm happy to try to answer them if I can.
In the interest of time, I'd like to call the vote.
Second.
All right, so the vote's been called. It has a second. I'm waiting to hear back from our parliamentarian, but I think this is not debatable. You need to be a recognized speaker. So That's what I'm getting. So I guess.
If you're saying talk to me, I turn my video on.
I don't think that's what he means by recognize. I think you have to be recognized by Amber to call the vote. Amber, would you like to do so? Okay, I'll recognize you, Professor Jacobs.
Thank you very much. Now I'd like to call the vote.
All right. Do I have a second for that?
Second.
Harry, can you recognize David before all the other people that have been waiting patiently to ask the question?
I could, but we have 9 minutes to go, and I'll take who asked that? I'm sorry, Pavel. All right, so
yes.
All right, I'm confused now.
I mean, it does seem like we have time for one more person, and we can vote at 10:55 and we'll be done. Right, so
Yeah, if that's fine with you, I'm fine with having one more person ask comment.
I'm also fine with that.
Okay.
But I like you, Dr. Leo, I have a very hard stop at 11, so I don't
Yep.
want to miss the vote.
All right, so we have time for one more question. Amber, do you want to pick?
Yeah, I will call on Ophelia because she's next, but I don't know if she's pro or con.
I wrote down that I'm pro. I'll make this quick because I want to get to the vote, but I think it's very important that we vote for this. I was very impressed with the task force on institutional speech, the way they did their thing so thoroughly, took into consideration all the times that the Senate gave them feedback. I thought that was an amazing way in which the deliberative process worked. And it feels like someone earlier said, actually insulting and demeaning to have the Board of Regents just completely dismiss that in something that is so important, and in a time period where there are universities where boards of regents are actually canceling and eliminating university senates. So I think it's very important that we have a clear and strong show of force by supporting this document.
Thank you. All right, 10:53. I'll let there be one more speaker. Amber, would you pick the next person?
I've lost track of any pros or cons. I think everyone that I heard from is still pro, so I'll just go to Carolyn Bishop next.
Hi, thank you. Carolyn Bischoff, Faculty Senator from the Libraries. I'm a PNA staff with membership in the Faculty Senate because of the nature of my position. I'm one of many staff members in the library who engage in research, teaching, and outreach, and I'll echo other Senate colleagues and say that we absolutely have a stake in this discussion as staff and discussions of academic freedom. I think we would simply want to have the ability to issue statements on our website on behalf of the issues that our collections address and the communities that we serve. So I'm strongly in favor of this resolution. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Pavel, did you have a question? Or did you just want more people to speak?
I did have a question, and someone can clarify that. This was building on what Mark B said. If that resolution that was passed by the Board of Regents would come into effect as a policy, would that prevent any statements that the University Senate made in the future be displayed on the university website?
I don't know that I can answer that question. Mark, I saw you turn your microphone off.
Are you recognizing me, Chair Leo?
I am recognizing you, Mark B. Yes.
I don't know the answer. I would just note that statements made by the University Senate are hosted on Google Drive as PDFs, and they appear on unbranded University of Minnesota websites currently. And that's the current practice of the Senate. And so I don't want to speak for anybody other than me. I don't think that those would be subject to anything related to what the board is considering.
I would add only that, again, the Board of Regents resolution is not a policy. I think everybody would be horribly confused if they just called it a policy and let everybody at it. Professor Caraway, would you like to say something?
I mean, the fact that we're confused about this shows you the problem with the resolution. And so they need to retract it. And then we can have a real discussion about the direction this thing needs to go. The way that this unfolded showed a complete disregard for the work of everybody involved. And this resolution will allow us to hit reset and start over, hopefully. But I think we need to move to a vote now, right, Professor Leo?
Yep. You agreed to a vote at 10:55. It's 10:56. So Amber, will you please initiate the poll?
Yes, I'm initiating it right now, and to be clear, this vote is to endorse the AF&T resolution, which condemns the Board of Regents resolution. Ten more seconds if you wish to vote. And last call. With 110 ayes and 14 nays, that motion carries.
Great, thank you, Amber. Is there a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
So move.
Second? All right, Amber, will you please, people just raise their hand. Oh, I guess you have to initiate a poll, Amber, sorry. Another poll.
Yeah,
Sorry.
adjourn, here we go.
Oops.
Oh, didn't.
It went away. If you could throw it back up for us.
Too. Yep.
So much ado for adjourning. All right, I'm just gonna skip right to last call. And with 125 ayes and no nays, that motion carries.
Great. All right, I thank everybody for your time. Have a good rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thanks.